Hello Starlet, so this is the second video for the day, and this is going to be a public video per request to go along with somebody's order, as well as to share my current thoughts and views about initiation with the goddess Morrigan, how we open ourselves up to that process, and towards the end talking about the two products as requested per the individual's order. And they asked me just to make them a couple of items, which was very much about opening them up to their new journey with regards to the Morrigan. And so I sat with that energy in meditation at the altar, channeling through to see what was needed and what would come through with regards to this particular energy. So there's a number of things that really started to influence me when it came to the arrival at the Gateway of the Morrigan, which is what the set is called, but also regarding initiation and how my views have evolved over time. The first thing that kind of really influenced me, if you're on Patreon then you know, we have returned to I Can't Witch Without on Patreon, introducing the secondary herb or flower or magical spell ingredient per month, and that is honey. And so we had a video about the folklore, and there is a lot of folklore about mead and honey and bees richly entrenched into every aspect of Celtic life, Celtic folklore across the Isles, in Ireland, in Scotland, in Cornwall, and across the British Isles. Mead makes its way into a lot of the honourings of gods, of celebration, of things like that. So this idea of mead being entrenched with ancient offering, as well as, honestly, I feel like milk and honey are good offerings for the Morrigan anyway, because milk being associated with the cows, milk is not present in mead, I will just say, or this, but it's a good alternative, and honey for its exciting energies attached to mead, of offering of libations to the gods, of it echoing eternity and having that kind of cosmic link, which we talked all about on that video, as well as the folklore attached to Maeve, which she makes up some of the Morriganic mythos do. Some of the other things that kind of really resonated with me with regards to this particular initiation energy is the long journey that myself and one of my sisters or priestesses of the Morrigan have been undertaking on a personal level for quite some time. Our Beltane and Samhain rituals especially have come to represent not just the divisions of the year, as in the Celtic divisions of the year between the light half and the dark half, but to do with the life gate and the death gate. So this is to do with initiation as well, but you may or may not have heard about me talk about life gate and death gate energies. So the life gate at Beltane is memento vivere, remember to live, and the death gate at Samhain is memento mori, remember that you will die. And these are almost like two counterbalances throughout the year, which represent journeys of life and journeys of death, and how all of those energies interweave with one another at any given point. They represent liminality, so they represent that in-between space, that gateway, that being on the threshold of something new. So thresholds, doorways, gateways and entrances, very much like cave entrances, are the magical spot where anything is, and potentially everything is possible. They're almost a bit like the middle of the crossroads point, or the nexus point between all imaginable futures and destinations. So there's kind of like this energy that interflows when it comes to the beginning of any great spiritual work in my mind. When we open ourselves up to the mysteries and open ourselves up to relationships, there is an energy of creation. There is an energy of initiation that we chase, or we begin. And so we are putting ourselves forth, we are putting our life essence into the decision to begin to co-create our reality. When we enter into initiation with the Morrigan, it is because we have heard her call. As I have said in other videos, it is the Morrigan who speaks to us, and we receive the call, and we can rise up to meet it, or we can decide to go another way. This does not discredit from people who work with the Morrigan for a limited amount of time, because that does occur as well. She has, you know, crow flybys, does some healing work with some people, or some sovereignty work, or whatever it might be, for a small period of time, usually a very difficult time in their life. She might come forward, guide them through, and once that is achieved, that is the end of that cycle. That is not to say it isn't any less powerful, because it isn't. But when we are engaging with the call for the Morrigan in terms of initiation, because this is where our heart, mind and spirit and herself have led us to, there is a essence of sacred word, sacred oath, geis, promise, and we open our mouth, or we don't even have to open our mouth really. We set ourselves to this energy, we set ourselves to this wording, we set ourselves to this promise, and our words become reality. So there's an energy of embodiment that has also been what we've been talking about a lot on Patreon as part of the Hawthorn cycle, the Hawthorn being deeply entrenched within the Beltane life gate energies, which we've mentioned. So there's this kind of sacred bond through words, and the magic that is invested in our words and what we say and how we carry through with our actions. Everything within the energies of this particular set has been created around this alchemy of self. How once we pass through the life gate, how once we dedicate, we begin the personal alchemy of self, we begin to change. And when we work with a goddess such as the Morrigan, who is the essence of change, she is the shapeshifter, there is no going back to who we used to be. The shutters are off, the blinds are gone, we have stepped over the threshold, and everything begins to change. Some people struggle with the change, some people rise up to meet the change. I myself am a very earth sign about change. I hate it. I know it's necessary, but I hate it. So it's kind of like kicking or screaming, we're going to do it anyway. I'm getting better at it, to be fair. We're sort of learning to adapt. Might have taken me longer than most people, who knows. But the change and the shift and the energy is exactly the point of initiation, of new beginnings. There should be a hopefulness, a brightness, a positivity, or if failing that, because sometimes initiations come through dark nights of the soul, sometimes there should be a kind of hope with teeth. So that's something that I've talked about before, that hope has teeth, and she can be beautiful and graceful and all of these things, but hope can also be like fangs bared, refusing to give up, the last breath, but I will keep going regardless. And that energy kind of weaves its way into initiation sometimes, because initiation is not always a beautiful performance, a lovely experience. Sometimes it is the end result of a lot of difficulty, and it is a moment of pure release from that difficulty when we come forward into a place of giving back who we are, and so we can really step into who we are becoming. And it can feel like grieving and a sense of loss at that time, because we do sort of grieve who we used to be and the letting go of who we used to be. That can be a very difficult spiritual process, and I wanted the energies within this particular spell set to have support. So there is an energy of like fiery alchemy of shifting and burning away the drudge of what used to be, as well as honouring what can be and who we are creating ourselves into. Initiation is not just a promise to the divine, but it is a promise to the self as well, and these two things intersect at all points. We embody our words. If you're on Patreon, you know all about this already, but I am going to explain it here in the video a little bit for the context of initiation. Something that I had mused around and wanted to know more about was why in the mythology, when people broke their oaths, was that a death sentence. I wanted to kind of know more about that process. Like in the mythology, it's like, and that was it, you know, that moment of doom. It's very poetic and prophetic and dramatic, which is all good and right in the bardic kind of mysteries, but I was like, what is the kind of process behind that, please, Morrigan? And I kind of got a number of answers, and there's this kind of thing about when your words, which are more real than people remember that they are, and can change the whole course of human history, whether they are spoken or written down, they are pure magic. And the way that we talk about something is how we are creating it. And it doesn't always have to be verbal language, it can be embodied language or whatever. But how we speak of ourselves is what becomes. And so when we hold words that are not the truth, and when we sort of allow it to become a stagnant putrefaction of our sacred promise, we kind of embody that. It kind of like takes hold, takes root within the body, leading to the leeching away of life force, or the leeching away of joy. And so because initiation is tied directly into life force, a lesson of life force, and sacred words, and how we speak those sacred oaths into being, and then how we act upon them, that kind of feeds into the energy of this particular lesson, as well as the spell set of energy. I kind of really liked the idea of the spell set reflecting a libation, something that you might drink in offering, because that is the taking of something into your physical self, into your body, in offering, which is something people do talk about a bit, a little bit, and there's kind of like, you can infuse your beverage on the altar and give her some, and then drink some yourself. And so that's the same process, the partaking of something a little bit spiritual and bringing it into the physical vessel, which is kind of a reflection of the magical process. We take a thought, we take an idea, we take a concept out of the ether, we like pull it down through our minds, and we create a vision of that, and then we make that manifest within our physical reality. And the one way of doing that is of speaking it into being, singing it into being, the energy of poetic verses, and bringing all of that into being, or it might actually like be physically creating something. But usually there is that process of taking something spirit, that spark of divinity, that spark of inspiration. Being inspired is big in the Celtic tradition, and then bringing that forth to share with others. So there's that becoming a liminal space in your own physical being. Your own body is the vessel of liminality. There you go. Joey and her poetic words. That's a very poetic way to say that you are spirit. You are having a magical experience, and you are then creating that magical experience all around you. And that's not to say every magical experience is going to be beautiful and uplifting and hopeful, and like some of them hopeful in the joyous sense, some of them will be, but sometimes we create an incredible mess, sometimes we have to learn the hard way, sometimes we hurt and harm, be it ourselves and other people. Not condoning like physically hurting other people, by the way, but like it's an inevitability of life that sometimes disagreements get out of hands, and words can wound really powerfully and leave a lasting impact as well. People tend to minimise the damage that words and things can do, but some words can stay with us and last a lifetime. Again, kind of highlighting the importance and the power of our words, and how to try and learn upon our journey to keep that in sacred oath to the self. And we may have to keep coming back and keep having to find some censure from the Morrigan or from ourselves, and that's good if that happens, because if you can hold yourself to account and you can hear the words of the Great Queen even when they're not fueling your ego, then you know that you're on the right path, because to walk the path with the Morrigan is not to be self-congratulatory, brain is semi-migraine, sorry, every step of the way, but instead to hold oneself to account. To know sovereignty is also to be of service, to be honourable is also to honour the situations around you with other people. That is not to become a doormat to others, and that's not always to allow other people to sort of railroad you with their opinions, thoughts or beliefs, because you kind of have to stand your ground as well. So there's kind of all of that energy is here, that kind of like courageous need to step into the person that you are alchemizing into and becoming, because that is super important. Okay, so the energies within we have kind of discussed. There is an anointing oil and a spray currently. I might do an incense stick if people require it, but for now it's going to be those two, and I will show those two images here at the end of the video. And there is a scent range with a very strong honey and smoked honey base, lots of smoky fiery tones, with hints of like apple, honey and a whiskey with a lot of smoking it out, so it has this gorgeous, as if I'd made Morrigan Mead, which I might actually have to do, scent to the range, and it has those energies that I have been describing all the way through for you. So I hope this video is helpful for the individual who requested the items, and for anybody wanting to know a little bit more about my thoughts about initiation. Many blessings, and I'll talk to you soon.